we're using a awry predator, trout predator here in a 1/0. I like a little bit heavier wire here, especially with a single hook and a deer hair head. This will keel the fly automatically with that wide gap. They're really nice sharp hooks, so try not to stab yourself. Already got some marks here. Some of those are from the puppy though. So start your thread about midway. This is Vivus 140 in white. I'm gonna wrap right back to the barb there. My first material is just basic zonker hide. Sometimes it's really nice to buy these really big packs, especially if you like tying a lot of flies. This is the easy way to go, and it's really nice, dense stuff from Hairline. Shove that back in there. Okay. When you're using a zonker hide, the hair is directional. So you can see here, this hair is working back this direction. That's the back side. We're going to find the front. Great. And for our purposes, we're going to measure out basically the eye back to our thread. Sometimes it's nice to have a little bit extra up front to work with, so don't cut it too short too soon. Then wet your fingers and start pulling apart the hair, because you want to expose the hide there. See how I can see the hide there? I'm going to lay that down where my thread is. Trying to trap too many pieces of hide. I put 3 wraps on that. And a few wraps in front. Great. Grab your hair clip or whatever you're using. You can trim this now if you want. Biggest issue I see is people will end up trimming them way too short. You want a fairly long tail on this. So if you're gonna cut it now, be generous, but we're gonna wait. Okay, hair clip is in, just out of the way. Second part is our body material. We're gonna use some UV polar chenille in gold. Again, another directional material, although it works both ways. Find your tail end, put a few wraps on it to secure it, bite up against that rabbit. We're going to work our thread forward. Now, this is the time you need to start thinking about how much space you're going to need to spin that deer hair up front. If you can avoid adding thread wraps or materials where you want to add deer hair, it's just that much easier. So this is the time where you really set the tone for how much space you're going to give yourself. Think about how many wraps you want to do. So if you want to spin 2 chunks of deer hair, this is plenty with a collar. So think about that. We're going to use the rotary function here. So I'm going to put a little whip finish. You can just half hitch if you want. Bring your cradle around. Try not to trap too much rabbit when you're doing this. It is kind of inevitable though. Now, you can use your Velcro if you want. You can use your comb. I think it's just easier to wet your fingers, and we're actually going to wrap a little bit back on this. That's going to help orient it towards the rear. Okay, and bring all those fibers down. See how I'm trying not to stab myself here. You can bring your rabbit forward. And we're going to do the same thing we did at the back end, where we exposed the hide. Let's see how it's nice to have that extra piece because I can pull it nice and tight. And I'm wrapping a little bit on top of some rabbit there, that's okay. Snip it close, toss your excess. already this is looking good, pretty good. You could totally tie these two things and you're gonna catch fish, but sometimes it's just a little bit more fun to add some other materials. That's why we're gonna add a wrap of marabou here. So white and tan here, or cream works really well for this color scheme. I buy these big, huge packs of marabou. It makes it really nice and easy. What we're looking for here is actually a pretty short feather, because I don't want this whole thing to turn into a marabou fly. I want that tail to stay really prominent at the back. So you can always measure your fibers about how long they're going to be. That's perfect. Great. All right, I've chosen two really similar pieces of marabou here. These are a little bit shorter. It's what I would call more like woolly bugger marabou. You got thick stems here, but we're just going to use these long tips. Gonna end up with two really similar plumes. Lay those on top of each other. And find the tips. Great. See how similar those ended up? We did pretty good. Now you're gonna set these with the tan on top. I always like the lighter color towards the back, but we're gonna blend it a little bit. We try and not overdo the marabou because it will dominate the whole fly if we're not careful. Now see how I'm trying to keep this space nice and open for our deer hair when it becomes time. And since we're only doing a wrap or two, there's really no need to use the rotary for this part. One really helpful tip, wet your fingers again, work these back for when you wrap it. Really looking to do 1.5, maybe 2 wraps at the max, because I want this flash to shine through. And because any more wraps, these stems will start to separate and things get a little messy. Cut the stems. Try and wrap back on them a little bit. Just make sure you're nice and secure. Grab your a little comb here. That looks pretty good. Pretty good. From there, you got a lot of options. If you like rubber legs, you can do rubber legs. If you want flash, you can do tons of flash. If you want ostrich hurl, you can. The great thing about this fly is it's a pretty open format. It's a easy template to modify, turn into your own fly. If you want to use ostrich instead of marabou, I think that would look great. I think there's a fly, I think he has Wanda in the name or something. That's a great one with some ostrich hurl. I'm gonna add some small little lateral scale, as I have with a lot of other patterns. You could also add a large lateral scale on the side here. Gold would look really nice. All right. And I've saved myself tons of space for the deer hair work up front. Okay, we've finished tying in the rabbit, the flash, marabou, all the good stuff. I've tied off the 140. I'm gonna add gel spun to the mix. It's gonna help us work with the deer hair. Keep that flash out of the way. You can always wet your fingers and work that marabou back. That'll help keep it out of the way. All right, first things first, for your deer hair, we got 2 different types today. So this is a standard body hair. This is a Primo strip. You can get these right at our fly shop. Really well-defined tips, easy to align, make great collars. You can also spin heads out of this if you want. However, using belly hair will make life way easier, and you're going to see why as soon as we get there. So pick a chunk of deer hair out of here, chop it. I always grab more than I need. This is probably about 1.5 diameters of the classic Ticonderoga pencil. Did I say that right? Ticonderoga. Grab a comb, try and get that under fur out of there. Sometimes your fingers work just as well for stuff the comb misses. All right, grab a stacker, insert tips down, give it a few pops. Bring your stacker horizontal before you open it, otherwise it's just going to go everywhere. And you want the tips oriented towards the back or oriented towards the direction you're going to tie them. Okay, tips. See how nice and consistent that is? Great. All right, now measuring your deer hair is very important. I want the tips of this deer hair, when I measure it, to be right at the back of the hook from my tie-in point. That's not how they're going to look when you tie them in, but that's what you need for a measurement. Looks pretty good. Transfer it, trim it. Ideally, you do that with a trash can, but I like to show you. All right, pinch those tips close to the butts now. And you're gonna provide constant pressure with your left hand here. You can take what's called a gathering wrap. It's a very, very loose wrap because we wanna have it right before you apply pressure. Cinch, pressure, wrap, pressure. We're gonna wrap into this bunch of butts. That's gonna really secure this in. And you've got a nice collar that doesn't go quite all the way back, but just about right. It's nice and secure. Had I let go, it would have started to spin. It would have really been a lot more work trimming the deer hair and keeping everything in line. Now we're going to switch to belly hair. And I've actually given myself space to do 2 different wraps. That's why we're using gel spun today. It makes life way easy. If you look here, right against the hide there, see how thick that hair is? That's good. That's full of air. It's going to make it really easy to spin. Cool thing about some of these hairs, you know, with the dye job that's still white there, because all the belly hair comes white, that'll give you some fun color variation for the head too. Or you can go to this side where it's all tan. Trim a big chunk, big chunk. You're gonna lose a lot. It's okay, part of the deal. We're not stacking this. You can if you want. I don't really see a point. Grab your comb, get as much of that fluff out of there as you can. Sometimes it's tough to get all of it. You get all these tips, right? Well, we're gonna make this real simple. We're actually gonna cut those tips right off. We don't need them. All right, this is a part that takes a little bit of practice. But what I like to do is grip it with my right hand, pinch down the collar here, cinch it there right in about the middle where my thread is. Now transfer it to my left hand. Okay, have it gathered. Take 2 very loose wraps and then keep wrapping. See how it spun right around the shank there? That's exactly what we want. And you can keep wrapping if you want, but this will be pretty secure. Thumbnails are your best friend, or if you've treated yourself, a hair stacker is an awesome tool at this point, or a hair packer. And what I'm doing is packing that in there and clearing up a spot for the next wrap. have it as close to this last stack as possible. And we're gonna just repeat the process. I'm gonna cut another chunk, maybe not quite as big. Deer hair is the reason small little hand vacuums make great presents for fly tigers. Okay, same process. Keep the same length. I see this problem once in a while where people will trim the hair really, really short in these little teeny stacks because they want it easier to trim. I think more hair makes it easier to trim, personally. Take your scissors, great. Trim her up. Now, same process. Hold it in my right hand, pinching this down. I want to expose this tie-in point as best as I can because this can be tough because it's going to be at an angle. I'm just jamming it in there, pinching. Gather wraps, take your time, trying not to capture too much of this. See, I'm gonna redo this here because I caught a little bit of that backside. And practice this, come up with your own system. Everybody has a different system. It's inevitable that you're gonna goof up. It's just part of the deal. And you will capture some of these fibers no matter what. So try and do two loose wraps and then pinch and then start to rotate. And sometimes you have to manually help this stuff around. Deer hair is pretty stout, so don't be afraid. Wrap in front. Another great feature with these awry hooks is a very good sized eye, so it makes it really easy to work with deer hair, especially in a tight space, because you know you're going to be able to find the eye, and you know you're going to be able to tie it off. Okay, grab your whip finish tool, or if you're doing it by hand, try and trap as little as possible. It's okay, you will trap some. That's why we used extra. Oops. Usually I do 2 wraps of 5. And really seat that. I'm cranking. Awesome. That's the fly, simple, right? Ha, well, we missed that one part where we're trimming. This is probably a good time to mention, you can use a brush on this if you want. Absolutely, grab a Senyo 1.5 chromatic would be awesome on this fly as well. You could really pack it in there tight and it'll dart side to side if you want. So, things to think about. I'm gonna go ahead and trim the rabbit hair. I always trim it long and then I kind of fix it later on. So I'm gonna bring it back at least 1 shank length, maybe 2 shank lengths back. And it's real important when you're trimming this to only be trimming the hide. Otherwise it's gonna look really, really ugly. And that's too long, but we'll fix it later. Okay, let's talk trimming deer hair. Okay, let's talk about trimming some deer hair for the, Okay, let's talk trimming deer hair so we can finish this fly up. Your best friend is going to be a double-edged razor blade here. We sell them at the shop. You can get them at most drugstores or grocery stores if they have a really good selection. A little bit tougher to find sometimes though. These are great little dispensers that come out the side, and they have a spot to put them once you're done, so you're not just throwing them in the trash. One I've already started today I want to show you a little trick. I've always had a issue remembering what side I've used, what side I haven't. So nowadays I put 2 different marks on the razor blade. 1, 2, start with one side, and then once that's done, move to the next side instead of switching back and forth all the time. Because really, one of these is going to trim maybe 2 flies, maybe 3 if you're lucky, if they're small flies. So don't be afraid to go to a really sharp blade because it will make a huge difference. First things first, flip this fly upside down, wet that marabou, get it out of the way as best you can. And we're going to come in, and I'm actually going to rotate this so this hook is aligned about 90 degrees to me, so it's flat when I'm looking on at it, because I want to align my blade with this flat eye. And I've used that side already once, and it's already starting to dull, because when you use a really sharp blade, you barely even have to apply pressure. That, or I've packed it in really well. Take a look there, pretty nice and flat. And we can touch this up as we go, but I like to use a little bit of a small rounded head on this fly. You can do a little wedge if you want, fancy, whatever, don't worry about that. But at this point, what I'm doing for the first trim, I'm flexing the blade like this, and I'm using the eye of the hook as a guide, not as a spot to chop in, but a spot to start my angle with, because I'm going up a little bit. Now, if you've never seen a sculpin, you guys see one in person. They're, number one, really cool, but also their heads are huge. I mean, it's a fat head. So don't be afraid to go too wide. When I first started doing deer hair flies and sculpin flies, I thought, gosh, these are all oversized. They're not. They're right. That's how it is. This is a big little bait fish. Big little bait fish, I know. That's about as far as I'm going to trim this. I could really trim it down and shape it, but I like to leave it fairly open. It doesn't have to be perfect. We throw a lot of these flies in the wood, and I don't want to feel bad when it goes in the wood. So what's left to do here is trim our deer hair and our flash a little bit shorter than what we got, because that's a big single. And I think the ratios are everything. So we're going to trim half an inch off of this until it looks right. Flash with it, those little lateral scales. And that's the fly. This is a little bit bigger than the one I showed you. Deer hair can be really frustrating, so please practice it. Practice it with a bare hook, and it'll be your best friend. So take this, turn it into something that can be useful for you in your watershed. We get a lot of tan, sandy bottoms, and some of the best advice that's out there is matching the bottom of your river, because that's what. Thanks everyone for watching today. Appreciate it. I hope this has been a helpful video for you. Please leave us comments, suggestions, anything like that. If you have not done so, please subscribe. There's a button in the top corner, and know that there's a link to all the materials used and where you can find them in the description. It'll take you to our website and give you a nice description of, what you need to get to tie this fly. Thanks everyone. Happy tying.